This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Thanks so much.
You can answer.
Thank you, Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Pacht, for the very warm introduction. Rishus Chashva Rabbeim, Rabbi Ronen Shlita, Rabbi Reifman, good Chaverim. I just want to mention that may the learning be Zechus for Shalema for Matan Rafal Natano ben Esther, Yeshua ben Chana, Asher ben Miriam, Hena Bashi Bas Shena. So there's a Rebbe, a very talented Rebbe, who was a great Talmid Chacham, but he wasn't really connecting with his class, with his Talmidim. So they suggested that maybe the Rebbe go on an outing with the Talmidim, that he should go hunting with the Talmidim. So they got the Rebbe the gun, and they go out into the forest, and they see the deer, and the Rebbe picks up the gun to shoot, the Talmidim pick up the gun to shoot, and bam, the deer is hit, and the deer drops dead, and now the shaila is, who killed the deer? The Rebbe? The Talmidim? So the Rebbe said, I know it was me. Look at the bullet hole, in one ear and right out the other. So Rabbi Pacht said that perhaps I'm not going to be giving a shmooze today, but maybe, I'm not sure if it is. We'll see. You'll tell me. I want to pose to you a very interesting question. This is not a typical question. Certainly in the yeshiva here, maybe this wouldn't be the regular question that we would ask, but still it's a question that troubles me. There's a comment in Tana D'Beliyahu. In Tana D'Beliyahu it says the following. This is something we're probably all familiar with. It says, Lafika chayisi oimer. Therefore I would say, this is Eliyahu Hanavi talking. Shekol echad v'echad mi Yisrael, every single Jew, chayiv loimar, is obligated to say, Masai yagiu masai lemasai avoisai Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov. When will my actions be on the level of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? When am I going to get to the level? Now it's interesting. The Tana D'Beliyahu doesn't say, we recommend that a person say, when am I going to reach the level of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? The Tana D'Beliyahu doesn't say, you really need to do this. It uses the word chayiv. You're obligated to do this. Chayiv. Now I don't know if you're allowed to ask this question. I think you are. How does the Tana D'Beliyahu know that you're obligated to say, when will our actions reach the actions of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? What's the makar? It's very interesting. If you look in the Gemara, when the Gemara talks about the mitzvah of being maver sedra, you read the Parsha twice and the Targum once. The Gemara doesn't say you have to do it. The Gemara says, lo oilam. Always you should. That seems to be, it's like a good idea, it's a good suggestion. And if you look in the Torah says, tzarech, you should. And if you look in the Shulchan Aruch says, chayiv, you have to. So, you see the progression of the halacha, from a suggestion to you should, to you have to. You have to is a very strong statement. How do Chazal know that a person has to say, when will my actions reach the actions of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? What's the source? What is it like? When it comes to be maver sedra, the poskim ask, how do you know you have to be maver? So they say it's a takana of Moshe Rabbeinu. Is this a takana of Moshe Rabbeinu that you need to say, Masai yagiu masai, lemasai avoisai Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov? What's the source of such a halacha, of such a hashkafa? So I want to share with you the words of Rabbeinu Yoina. Rabbeinu Yoina on the third Shar. Now, the Shari Tshuva is a very important sefer. Reb Chaim Volozhiner writes about Shari Tshuva that there are different Musar Svarim that speak to different people. I personally, I'm a Mesil Sisharim guy. Mesil Sisharim always talks to me. Some people are more into Chavas Havavos. Some people are more into Archas Tzadikim. Reb Chaim Volozhiner says there's one Musar sefer that speaks to everyone. He says Shari Tshuva. So Shari Tshuva was written by a Rishon. It's one of the earliest Musar Svarim. And certainly we're entitled to ask, on every word of the Shari Tshuva, we're entitled to examine and ask ourselves, why did he say it this way? And we're allowed to measure and count each and every word. Now, Rabbeinu Yoina is talking about the levels, the hierarchy of Torah and mitzvahs. So, the most stringent would be averos that carry with it a penalty of, let's say, misas bezdin. Below that, lesser penalties, alav. And so to speak, the most innocuous of all the mitzvahs in the Torah, says Rabbeinu Yoina, is something called mitzvah saseh. If somebody fails to fulfill a mitzvah saseh, there's no legislated punishment. That's sort of, so to speak, the lowest on the totem pole of the mitzvah satorah. Now, I want to ask you the following question. What would you say are the most important mitzvahs in the Torah? Well, what are the most important mitzvahs in the Torah? So you say you can't ask, there's no such thing. It says in Pirkei Avos, you have to be careful with each and every mitzvah, because we don't really know the reward and the punishment for a mitzvah. But nevertheless, if we could make such a statement, is there like a meat and potatoes when it comes to observing mitzvahs? Are there mitzvahs that are more important than others? It's a very interesting Gemara, Masechta Shabbos. The Gemara says, children came into the Beis Medrash and they said a chiddush that even from the time of Yoshua ben Nun, such a chiddush has never been said. They darshan the letters of the Aleph Beis. You want to hear what they said? Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalid, Hey, Vav. It's not a Shweki song. That's a Aleph Beis, Aleph Bina. You know what Aleph Bina means? Learn Torah. Gimel Dalid, Gemal Dalim, do Chesed. Hey Vav, that's the name of Hashem. That if you learn Torah and you do Chesed, the name of Hashem will be upon you. So the Chafetz Chaim observes, oh wait a second. That means that these two mitzvahs are alluded to in the very beginning of the Aleph Beis. Aleph Beis is learn Torah. Gimel Dalid, do Chesed. That must mean, says the Chafetz Chaim, that as valuable and as important as all mitzvahs in the Torah are, the meat and potato of being a Yid is number one, limud HaTorah, and number two, acts of kindness. These are the two central avenues of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Aleph Beis, learning Torah, Gimel Dalid, Gimel Dam. So if someone asks you, what are the two most important mitzvahs in the Torah? You could say decisively, number one, learning Torah. Number two, doing chesed. That says the Chafetz Chaim in the Avas Chesed. We learn that from this Gemara. So bearing this in mind, I want to read to you a few lines of Rabbeinu Yoina, and something really hit me. Rabbeinu Yoina is in the Shari Tshuva. So he talks about all the mitzvah saseh. Wear tzitzis, put on tefillin, so you light the candles Friday night is a mitzvah d'oraisa, Birchas HaTorah is a mitzvah d'oraisa, saying Kriya Shema is a mitzvah d'oraisa. But then says Rabbeinu Yoina, now let's not talk about specific mitzvah observance. We're going to talk about something called Mailos ha'elyonos. What's a Mailo ha'elyono? That aside from specific mitzvahs, there are general categories of the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which are really our main objectives in this world. I'm going to give you a few examples that Rabbeinu Yoina says, that these are not just specific mitzvahs, but these are general categories of avenues of serving Hashem. He says, Yiras Shamayim. That's not a specific mitzvah, that's a whole world, a whole realm of the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Avas Hashem, love of God. Says Rabbeinu Yoina, Zichroin chasadav v'hisbainanusai, remembering the kindness Hashem does to you and thinking about it. So I just gave you a few examples. Now I'm going to read to you the first three Mailos ha'elyonos on Rabbeinu Yoina's list. Says Rabbeinu Yoina, you should know, Ki hamalos ha'elyonos nimsaru lanu b'mitzvah saseh. Great attributes, great levels were given to us by mitzvah saseh, kemoi. And I'm going to read to you three examples. Number two, I'm going to skip number one for a minute. Number two, malois Talmud Torah, the great attribute, the great level of learning Torah, shenemar v'dibarta bam. Number three, malois leches b'darchei Hashem, the great attribute of walking in the ways of the Ribono Shel Olam, the mitzvah of chesed. Shenemar v'halachta b'drachav. So amazingly, Rabbeinu Yonah seems to have gotten it right. He seems to agree with the Chafetz Chaim that number 2 on the list is learning Torah, and number 3 on the list is doing chesed. And what's the very first Mailo Ha'elyoina in Rabbeinu Yonah? Remember, this is a very impressive list here. Learning Torah, doing chesed, Yiras Shamayim, Avas Hashem. Number 1 on the list of Rabbeinu Yonah, Malois HaBechira. The Maila of free choice. Shenemar, Uvacharta B'chayim. Like the Pasuk says, and you should choose life. The Maila of Bechira? What in the world is the Maila of Bechira? We all know what Bechira is. Bechira is free choice. But there's no mitzvah in the Torah of free choice. It's not a mitzvah in the Torah. It's a concept that we have free choice to do what's correct or to do an Avera, or to do the wrong thing. What does Rabbeinu Yonah even mean that one of the Malois Ha'elyonos, one of the great attributes, one of the great realms of service of Hashem is the Maila of Bechira? What does that mean? What is that? Nobody says Bechira is a mitzvah. Either you do the right thing or you do the wrong thing. How is it like learning Torah? How is it like doing chesed? How is it like loving the Ribono Shel Olam? And even more, why is it number 1 on Rabbeinu Yonah's list? Why is the very first Maila on the list of Aseis in Rabbeinu Yonah's totem pole, Bechira? Bechira. And I'll tell you the truth. I've seen many pshatim and many comments to try to explain this line of Rabbeinu Yonah. What does Rabbeinu Yonah mean that the Maila Ha'elyoina, the top of the list is the Mailas HaBechira? I never saw anything satisfying, but I'm going to share with you what I think is the definitive explanation for the words of Rabbeinu Yonah. So the Bnei Yisrael are coming out of Mitzrayim, and just imagine what they've been doing for 210 years. They're building pyramids. They're involved in very unsophisticated labor. They're making cement. They're making mortar. They don't have any skills. They don't have any craftsmanship. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, guess what? Great idea. The Ribono Shel Olam just told me that we're going to make a Mishkan. So they say, what's a Mishkan? A Mishkan. A Mishkan, first we have a menorah. What's a menorah? It has 7 branches. Okay, I think we can handle that. But then the menorah has 42 intricate designs, goblets, cups, flowers. Okay, they said. So we'll go to the store, we'll get some gold, we'll make a menorah, and then we'll glue on the knobs and the goblets. No, Moshe Rabbeinu said. It has to be made out of one mass of gold. How are we going to do that? I don't know. We're going to have to chisel it out. I mean, that's a skill that could take a person a lifetime to master. They weren't artisans. They weren't professionally trained to weave tapestries where kruvim are on one side and eagles are on the other side. This is one of the, you need like a Michelangelo to make a Mishkan like this. And yet the Pasuk says, who stepped up? Who stepped up to the plate and rose to the occasion to create the Mishkan, to fashion the Mishkan, to weave, to chisel out? The Pasuk says, Vayavayu kol ish asher nesa'oi libay. Every man whose heart raised him up came before Moshe Rabbeinu. Every man whose heart raised him up. And the Ramban wants to know, what does it mean their heart raised them up? What's the expression that each man whose heart elevated them came before Moshe Rabbeinu? Says the Ramban, a tremendous principle. Never forget this. And I'm going to introduce this Ramban with the words of Rabbi Rucham, the Mashgiach of Mir, who poses a very searing question, a very poignant question. We all know, especially in our yeshiva, in the Chafetz Chaim yeshiva, where we emphasize the Messiah and the tradition of the Gedolim of the generations, we know there's something called a Rosh Yeshiva, there's something called an Achroin, there's something called a Rishon, there's a Goin, there are Amoraim, there are Tanoim. If I were to ask you, what's the difference between an Achroin and a Rishon? Like, In what way, let's say, was Rashi, the Rambam, the Rif, the Ran, how were they greater than the Chassam Sofer, Rabbi Kiva Eger, the Marsha? Like, what's the difference between them? Was it that the Rishonim were holier? Or did they have more Yirah Shamayim? Did they have greater Hasmada? In other words, if we needed to pinpoint what is the Nakuda, the line of demarcation, the ingredient that marked the difference between a Rishon, an Achron, a Navi, a Tana, a Moira, what is the point of difference? Says Yerucham, Rabbi Yerucham, it's obvious. It's not that in the earlier generations they had greater hasmada than us. It's not that they were smarter than us. It's not that they had more Yirah Shamayim than us. He says something shocking. The difference between us and them is that they were more ambitious and they had greater dreams. They wanted it more. They had greater cheshek. When Rashi and the Rambam and the Rif woke up in the morning, they said, I want to be the Gadol Adar. I want to master Kol HaTorah Kula. I want to know HaKadosh Baruch Hu to the highest degree. I want to be like Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And we sell ourselves short. We're happy. We wake up in the morning. I'll just try to do a little bit today. We don't dream. We're not ambitious. We don't have great hasagos. Says Rabbi Yerucham, if you go out and look in the business world, in any area, in any discipline, in general, who are the most successful people? The smartest people? Not always. The most charismatic people? Not always. The most talented, says Rabbi Yerucham, in almost every discipline in this world. Usually the most successful people will be the people with big aspirations, the people with big dreams. If you see somebody who has big plans, big dreams, big aspirations, you know they're made of the stuff of greatness. That, says Rabbi Yerucham, is the nakuda of difference between achroinim, rishonim, gaonim, tanaim. He calls it yazama, ambition. That as the doiros weaken, it's not that the sanctity weakens, the hasmada weakens, the Yerushalayim weakens. It's the drive, it's the ambition to be great in the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So comes the Ramban. This, I said, was an introduction to the words of the Ramban. That you had Jews who stood before Moshe Rabbeinu. And the truth is, they had no clue how to weave and to craft and to chisel and to create what the Mishkan needed to be. But they had one thing. They knew the Rebbeinu Shalom needed a Mishkan. The Rebbeinu Shalom wanted a Mishkan. And therefore, says Ramban, there's a concept that if a person has ambition to accomplish in any discipline, but certainly for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they're able to tap into resources in their own essence, in their own soul, in their own persona, kaichais, abilities and powers that they didn't even know they had. So you had a Jew who came before Moshe, and he said, Moshe, you need an aron, you need a menorah. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. How are you going to do it? I'm just going to do it. I know you need me to. And the Yid was able, says Ramban, he quotes the pasuk in Divrei Hayamim, Vayigba liboy b'darchei Hashem. His heart was elevated in the service of Hashem. There is a human ability that if you are ambitious to accomplish something, and you have a desire and a drive to achieve, you could actually dig deep down into your soul, which we know has endless potential, has potential to conquer the world, has potential to be successful in any area in this world, and to dig deep down and accomplish what the Ramban calls what you didn't know you had the ability to accomplish. That's the terminology. Vayigba liboy b'darchei Hashem. That's the terminology. Kol ish asher nesa'oi liboy. You look at this guy. Yesterday, he was making square bricks and cement, unsophisticated labor, untrained labor. And the next day he could be sitting in the future Oyel Moed doing what Michelangelo would do. Because he wanted it, and he wanted it bad, and he had a cheshek, and he had an ambition to accomplish for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why does Rabbeinu Yonah, in his list of Mailos Ha'elyonos, number 2 we said was Talmud Torah. Number 3 we said was Gemilas Chasadim. And number 1 on Rabbeinu Yonah's list was Malos HaBechira. What in the world is Malos HaBechira? I tell you, I found 10 different pshatim in contemporary Sfarim. There's a Sefer Shari Avoda in Yeshiva. Everybody knows the Shari Avoda from the first page. Most people never get beyond the first page of the Shari Avoda. But toward the end of the Sefer Shari Avoda, which was written by Rabbeinu Yonah, I found the gold mine. Where when I say this is the definitive pshat in the Shari Tshuva, this is because this is not someone else's pshat. These are the words of Rabbeinu Yonah himself. Listen to these words. Hachai yiteina libai. Every living person should contemplate the following. Yasim kamegamasai lavoid esbarei tamad. Place your aspirations to serve Hashem always. B'chol levavai, uv'chol nafshai, uv'chol ma'oidai. Why? Listen to this. Kedei lahasig mala kemalas hagadolim. To achieve the level of the greatest people who ever lived. Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron. So here Rabbeinu Yonah seems to be paraphrasing the Tanad Velyo that we began with. Chayiv Adam Loimar. Person's obligated to say Masai Yagiu Masai Lamasai Avois Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Says Rabbeinu Yonah. Uv'chol yoim v'yoim Yosef Oimetz. Every day, add strength. Lehischazek, to strengthen yourself. V'lalos mimida lamida, to rise up from one level to the next. Umi madrega madrega, from one rung to the next. V'yachmoy, listen to these words. Desire. V'yichsoif, yearn. Lehasig ba'avoida ma'she'en yadai masages. To want to achieve what you're not able to achieve. That's an incredible principle. You know, if we were to ask, let's say you went to somebody, you went to your Rabbi, and somebody told you, you could max out, you're capable of learning, 3 Masechtas in your life, or you're capable of learning at this level in your life. You say, Rabbi, okay, should I want to do more? No, why should you want to do more than you're able to achieve? Says Rabbeinu Yonah, no. A Yid should desire and aspire to achieve what they're not able to. You should do that to every character trait, whatever level you're on. Look at the shelf, look at the shas. I want to know the whole thing, or I want to know it be'iyun, right? I want to be a Baal Midas type. I want to be a Yarei Shamayim. Right now, I'm not holding on that level. You should want to do even what you're not able to do. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, V'yivchar ba, you should choose it, mikol kesef v'zav shaba'olam, more than all the silver and gold in the world. Now you'll ask, why should I want to do something I'm not able to do? Listen to this. V'al ha'bechira bilvad yikabel schar. For choosing it alone, you'll get reward. Just for wanting it, you'll get reward. Acharei asher ein yachal hasig yosef, you can achieve more. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, ki ha-bechira mitzvah saseh. Bechira is a mitzvah saseh. Shenemar, uvacharta b'chayim. There's a mitzvah d'oraisa of bechira, which none of the other moinei ha-mitzvahs count bechira as a mitzvah saseh. This Rabbeinu Yonah in the Shari Avoda is an open revelation what he means in the Shari Tshuva. What does Rabbeinu Yonah mean that one of the Mailos Ha'elyonos is a mitzvah bechira? That there's a mitzvah in the Torah, I would say most people are not even aware that you need to do this, let alone it should be a mitzvah in the Torah. But as we're about to see, not only is it a mitzvah in the Torah, in the world of Rabbeinu Yonah, it might be the most important mitzvah in the Torah. And that is, before you wake up in the morning, as soon as you get up in the morning, of course you have to put on tefillin, and of course you have to learn, and of course you have to do chesed. But there's a mitzvah upon which all Torah is predicated on. And that is, what do I want? What do I desire? What do I aspire to? What am I yearning to accomplish in this world? Say, what mitzvah is that? Says Rabbeinu Yonah, that's the mitzvah of Bechira. And for Bechira alone, you're going to be rewarded. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, the Gemara says in Brachos, that if a person plans to do a mitzvah, wants to do a mitzvah, wishes he did a mitzvah, and circumstances don't allow, so Hashem considers it as if you did the mitzvah. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, if a person wants to be like Avraham Avinu, yearns to be like Avraham Avinu, aspires to the Madrega of Avraham Avinu, then he'll get up to Shamayim and Hashem will reward him as if he's Avraham Avinu. He did his best, and he was shooting for the moon, he was shooting for the stars. But then Rabbeinu Yonah continues. Rabbeinu Yonah says, Oid yatsa lanu mimitzvas habechira. There's another advantage of Bechira. That if mitoich sheyivchar b'amida hahi v'yavin v'yaskil malas hamasagoisa, that if a person yearns, aspires, is driven to accomplish an avodas Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu yazer oisai b'ma she'en yativa yichayla lahaseg. The Rebbe Shalom will give a person siyata d'shmaya to achieve above and beyond what you're naturally able to achieve. So it comes out that this is such a fundamental concept, and maybe for young boys learning in yeshiva in your formative years, this is, I think, a very important concept to emphasize and to try to understand properly. And that is aside from a person's actual level that they're on and what they're actually doing, there's something, in the subconscious. There's something in the back burner. And that is, what do I want to be in life? Who do I want to become in life? What's my goal? What's my ambition? Do I want to settle just to, I'm going to coast? Or do I want to make something out of myself as much as I'm able to do, everybody according to their own potential? But in the world of Rabbeinu Yonah, this is called Bechira. Not what we usually think of Bechira, a free choice to choose between good and bad. Bechira in the world of Rabbeinu Yonah means, what are my dreams? What are my aspirations? What am I longing for? What would I like to become? This is what Chazal tell us. Chayiv Adam Loimar Masai Yagiu Masai Lamasai Avoisai Avram Yitzchak v'Yaakov. We started out, how do Chazal know that you're obligated to do this? Like, where does it say in the Torah? What's halacha l'Moshe misinai? Chayiv Adam Loimar Masai Yagiu Masai Lamasai Avoisai. What's the makar? Rabbeinu Yonah is clearly saying that the principle of Masai Yagiu Masai Lamasai Avoisai is an offshoot, is the natural expression of the mitzvah of Bechira. And if we are entitled to be medayik in Rabbeinu Yonah, in terms of the list that he made, so if the mitzvah of Talmud Torah is number 2, and the mitzvah of Gemilas Chasadim is number 3, why would Rabbeinu Yonah put the mitzvah of Bechira as number 1? If there is significance in the placement of where Rabbeinu Yonah locates what we call the Ma'ilo Halyana of Bechira, it would come out then that Rabbeinu Yonah perhaps feels that as important as Talmud Torah is, and as important as Gemilas Chasadim is, the foundation upon which all of our Avodas Hashem is based on, is the Rebbe Shalom doesn't look as so much what we actually do. The Rebbe Shalom looks deep into our heart, what we really want, what our goals are, what our aspirations are. In a way, the way the Rebbe Shalom judges us, looks at us, is what's our goal in life? What do we want out of this world? Here we are, we're in yeshiva, we take it for granted. How many Jews are there today in the world? I don't know, about 12 million Jews. You have, about 6 million Jews in Eretz Yisrael. You have, by the way, besides Eretz Yisrael today, the only country in the world that has more than 500,000 Jews is the United States of America. About 100 years ago, there were 500,000 Jews in many countries. And over the last 100 years, every 10 years or so, the former USSR, 1 million Jews come to Eretz Yisrael. And then 10 years later, Iran empties out. 10 years later, Iraq, Yemen, Morocco, today France, England is under 500,000. Canada is under 500,000. There's only one country in the world left today, besides Israel, that still has 500,000 Jews, United States of America. In the last 100 years, every decade, another country empties out. And out of the 12 million Jews, the Ribbon Shalom hand-selected over the last 3,000 years of Galus, a few 100,000 Jews who have the privilege to learn in yeshiva. So you have to ask yourself, and not take it for granted, that if I'm in a yeshiva today, the Ribbon Shalom wants me, He chose me, He selected me for something, to accomplish something with my life. If I may, I'll share with you a brief story, and then we'll close it. So in 1946, Rabbi Beryl Wine, very interesting personality, very multi-talented personality. He was a Rav, a Rosh Hashiva, a historian, a writer, a movie producer. He's got a lot of feathers in his cap. And he was 11 years old. He was a Ben Yachid, he was the only son, only child. And his father says, look, Beryl, we're going to the airport. What's in the airport? Rabbi Herzog, who was then the chief rabbi of Israel, was coming to America. This is in the immediate aftermath of the Holocaust. And Rabbi Wine's father said, we're all going to the airport, all the Rabbanim are coming to be Makabel Panav, and he's going to come to the yeshiva, to the Skokie yeshiva, and he's going to address the community, address the boys. Rabbi Herzog was a very regal, majestic personality. He wore a shining top hat, he had a cane, and he would carry a Tanakh. He was presented himself very regally. So he alights from the plane, and he's accompanied to the Skokie yeshiva. He had a few hundred balabatim and talmidim, and he gave a shiur for 45 minutes in Yiddish. And when he was finished with the shiur, he turns to the boys, and he tells the boys, I have to share something with you. Now, Rav Herzog had been a rabbi in Dublin, so he had a little bit of an Irish brogue, as they call it. And he tells the boys, I was just in Rome, and I went to visit Pope Pius XII. And I brought the Pope a klaf, a scroll. And on the scroll was a list of 10,000 Jewish boys and girls whose parents placed them in churches, in monasteries, with Christian families, hoping to save their lives during the Holocaust. And these kids were now in the monasteries, in the control of the Catholic Church. And Rav Herzog came into the Pope. He said, Pope, these are our children. Give us back our children. And the Pope said, we're not even giving back one. The law is that once a child is converted, is baptized, we can never return him. The children were baptized, and the Pope slammed the door on Rav Herzog's face. Now it happens to be, I know this story because my grandfather, who was in the Holocaust, when he was liberated, Rav Herzog came to the DP camps, and he told my grandfather that the Pope slammed the door on his face. And here Rav Herzog is standing in Chicago, and he's talking to a few hundred young men, and he tells these young boys, these 10,000 children are lost forever. And he's so overcome with emotion, he puts his head down on the podium, and he weeps like a baby. He weeps bitterly. And then Rav Herzog, who is a Goyin b'Yisrael, defiantly raises up his head. His face is red. He roars like a lion. There's nothing that we could do for these 10,000 children. But you young men, I ask of you, what are you going to do for the future of the Jewish people? You still could do something. You could still accomplish for the future of the Jewish people. What are you going to do for the future of the Jewish people? Rabbi Wine says, in his life, he was never so moved as by that scene of Rav Herzog in 1946. And he says throughout his life, whenever he overcomes a hurdle, whenever he faces a challenge, whenever he wants to put down his pen, whenever he wants to throw in the towel, he hears ringing in his ears those words, what are you going to do for the future of the Jewish people? And this is what Rabbeinu Yonah is telling us. Mailas habechira, the great attribute of free choice, that we have to ask ourselves if we're still around today, and Hashem has given us the privilege to come to yeshiva every day, to learn the Torah, to have guidance from Rabbeim, to have guidance from our parents. What are we going to do for the future of Klal Yisrael? You know, we're young, and we don't think about it, but these are the years where we have to soak in what our Rabbeim teach us. We have to think to ourselves, what are we going to accomplish in our lives? Why did the Rebbeinu Shalom give me the privilege to be from the miyuta that could sit and learn in a yeshiva? So, I wish everyone here that much hatzlacha in all of your learning, much hatzlacha in gaining from the Rabbeim, gaining from the Darach of the Yeshiva. And Klal Yisrael needs you, as they say. That's one of the main messages of our Yeshiva, of our Rabbeim, that we were not just here to elevate ourselves, but we have a purpose in this world. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu give us all siyata d'shmaya, to elevate ourselves, to improve ourselves, to grow in our learning, in our midos, in our yer shamayim. We should all be zoicha lahagdol Torah ulahadira. Thank you so much.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.